This is a representative of the Living Legend Library at the Oklahoma Christian College, Eastern Avenue at Memorial Road in Edmond. And we're here today to make a survey of the progress of the Cherokee Village, which is sponsored by the Cherokee National Historical Society. And we have with us Colonel Martin Hagerstrand, who is Executive Vice President of the Society and who will document what is proposed and what has been done. Colonel Hagerstrand.
Thank you. The Cherokee Village is one part of a four-phase program sponsored by the Society. The four parts together we call the Cherokee Cultural Center. The origin of this program is very interesting. Several years ago, approximately 12, 13 years ago, Mr. Martin Hagerstrand of Tulsa, Mr. W.W. Keeler, Frank Muskrat, and Ty Cobb of Bartlesville conceived the idea, I don't know just exactly whose idea it was initially, that it would be good for Oklahoma to have a sequel to the outdoor drama Unto These Hills at Cherokee, North Carolina. That group organized a tour to the site at Cherokee, North Carolina to see the play, the drama, the Cherokee Village that was located there, and the Cherokee Museum. Upon their return, it was generally agreed that we ought to stage a drama of that nature here in Northeast Oklahoma. There became a division of opinion as to the site for such a project, and since no agreement was reached, the project lay dormant for many, many years and had been all but abandoned. About 6 years ago, this project was revived as an idea, and it became evident that in order to carry out this idea, the project would need sponsorship of a different kind of an organization, would need a great deal of pre-planning work, and would need great public support. The method by which all of these things was to be achieved was the organization of a new nonprofit society which had several purposes, and thus the Cherokee National Historical Society, Incorporated, was born for this purpose. This is a state-chartered nonprofit educational, cultural, charitable society. It's a membership society. We have members all over the United States. It is operated by a board of directors, primarily of Oklahomans or former Oklahomans, not necessarily Cherokee in origin, but certainly it is heavily weighted with Cherokees would be the case. Its president is Mr. W.W. Keeler, who has been the president from the beginning. We have a board of directors of 17 members who control the affairs of the society, and an executive committee of 5 of the officers of the society, 5 members who actually do the in-between major board meetings business. As the society visualizes this project, we have a number of objectives. The first, of course, is the economic advantage in terms of money brought to the area, a depressed area at this particular time, low income, great unemployment, particularly amongst the Cherokee Indians, who form a substantial portion of the population of this area. We believe that this particular project will serve as a major economic boost for this area. Another purpose certainly not subordinated to the first, but very definitely a major purpose, is the preservation of the Cherokee history. This history, both prior to Oklahoma and subsequent to the Cherokee's arrival in Oklahoma, is unique in many, many respects. Because it is so unique, we searched for ways and means to present it dramatically. We were interested in portraying the entire range of Cherokee history from the earliest information about it on up into the present time, and then provide the means for maintaining this history as changes occur in the future. The Cherokee Cultural Center became the mechanism by which we could do this. The Cherokee Village is the first phase then of a four-part program to accomplish these purposes, and in many respects the easiest to accomplish, in other respects most difficult. First, we were interested in portraying as much as possible the era prior to extensive white influence in the Cherokee tribe. In our research, we found that this was very difficult to do because there was very little written about the Cherokee at that period, and it was very difficult to separate the Cherokee practices and culture from those of other Indians of southeastern United States. However, we did arrive at a general agreement as to how we would portray this, and the Cherokee Village became a living village in our minds based upon the research into the 17th century era and prior thereto. The second phase of the overall project is a drama, an outdoor drama. We call it an epic symphonic drama. It will be based on the Cherokee history from the Trail of Tears on up to statehood. This will portray the Oklahoma portion of the Cherokee Nation's history by using vignettes of that history incorporated into a dramatic form to show that the Cherokees had a very interesting history, a very unique history, and of course at times very dramatic. The amphitheater will be built just east of the present location of the Cherokee Village. It'll be about a 2,000-seat amphitheater to start with, expandable we hope to 3,000, and we hope the demand occurs. The third phase of this effort in the Cultural Center is the Cherokee National Museum. This is to be a professional museum. It'll be unique in architecture, using native stones of the area here and concrete and steel, of course. The basic plan, the initial plan, has been drawn, has been accepted by our board of directors, and we hope will be funded in some manner in the relatively near future. The fourth phase of this Cultural Center project is perhaps the most interesting and one which in many respects is the most challenging. This is the Cherokee National Archives. Structurally, it will be an interesting project. We will attempt to recreate in modern design, using concrete and steel and stone, an old Cherokee council house in outward form, built on a very high mound. It'll be terraced and a very outstanding and dramatic building. But this, of course, only sets the stage for what is to be within, and that is the collection of materials pertaining to the Cherokee, written materials of all the things that have been written about the Cherokee, for the Cherokee, and by the Cherokee. Because alone of all of the Indian tribes, the Cherokee developed its own alphabet, Cherokee tribe, and through the efforts of the great Sequoia, was made a literate nation relatively overnight by the addition of its own alphabet. This resulted in a tremendous volume of written material, both English and in Cherokee. And we hope to recapture much of this material. Obviously, it is going to be impossible to get much of the material that is now in the hands of museums and libraries and other societies. But with modern techniques of microfilm, of facsimile printing, so on, we hope to reproduce that material that we are unable to get in the original form. This will be a place for serious research, for casual reading, for just casual research, so on, for genealogical research, any purpose for which the reader or student or just the curious may wish to delve into Cherokee history about. We believe that this is a tremendous purpose and will result in something unique in this nation, which is a library, single-purpose library devoted to a single Indian tribe. Together, all of these 4 projects, or parts of the projects, or phases, constitute what we have termed the Cherokee Cultural Center. We are in the process of completing Phase 1, the Cherokee Indian Village, which we call Tsalagi, which roughly translated means Cherokee anyway. So we call it Cherokee Indian Village. And in our advertising, we will eventually stress Tsalagi. This village covers about 5 to 6 acres and is in a beautiful setting at the site of the old Cherokee Female Seminary. We believe this to be a choice location for the entire cultural center, incidentally, because this was the center of much of the Cherokee culture of the period, of the nation prior to statehood. The old seminary, female seminary, was authorized in 1846, one of the earliest in the nation. It was built or opened in 1851, and in it the young ladies were taught Greek and Latin and history and English and arts and sciences and so on, in a school system that far surpassed that of the contemporary school systems in the surrounding areas. To return to the village then, the village is at the site of the old seminary, but goes back, of course, to an earlier period than the Oklahoma period. We have in the village approximately 35 to 40, it varies, persons working in costume, in the ancient costume insofar as we can determine. They are living a life which is, as close as we can develop it, similar to that which their ancestors lived centuries before. We have done a great deal of research to establish the authenticity of much of that is in the village, and we believe that we can defend our case rather well against any inquiries. You go back a little bit and pick up. Now, the people who are working in the village are going about their daily tasks as though they were actually living there. They are creating the things that they need for living. And one of the purposes of the village is illustrated by this, and that is to show that the Indian, the Cherokee in particular, lived in an environment which he liked and was totally self-sufficient within that environment. He used nature, he used the things that were at hand to create a life which was totally satisfactory to him. The training program for training these arts and crafts was very interesting. The problem arose in roughly training Indians to be Indians. And this, while it sounds facetious, is in fact the problem, because many of these skills had been lost, or at least certainly were not known very widely, and it became a problem of just how to train a person to make a bow and arrow, for example, in the old way, not the modern type, but back 300 years before, the blowgun, to hollow out a dugout canoe, to create pottery by hand methods without using a wheel, to use native buckbrush and other materials to make baskets, things like that, to build old fish traps and fish weirs and so on. skills which are largely gone now because there is no need for them. We joined with the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Northeastern State College in establishing a training program.
Northeastern is located here at Tahlequah, is it not?
Yes, it is. Northeastern State College is the direct successor of the old Cherokee Female Seminary, incidentally, and dates its heritage back to 1846, the date of the act establishing the Cherokee Female Seminary. And when the old, this is an aside, and when the old seminary burned in 1887, the Cherokee tribe immediately set to work and rebuilt the seminary here in Tahlequah, and the building that is now used as the administration building of Northeastern State College is the old Cherokee Seminary, Female Seminary building that was opened in 1889, just 2 years after the old seminary burned. So Northeastern certainly has been very cooperative in our program. But through the agencies mentioned, Northeastern, BIA, and using the facilities at Sequoia High School, a federal Indian school south of Tahlequah, we ran an evening program 5 nights a week for the month of May to just introduce these crafts to many people who had never used clay before, or made baskets, so on, or tried to make arrowheads or bows, so on. We could not get the skills in that time, of course, but we could introduce how these things were made, and this is what we did. We also ran courses in general Indian history. We had courses on what the village was all about, how we were expecting to run the village, and how to act, which is really what the villagers are. They're actors in a play, as it were, a living drama that goes on all day long. And this was a very interesting assignment. In addition, we have guides, 15 guides that we're very proud of. These are Cherokees, college students primarily, some high school, who are specially trained for the purpose of guiding visitors through the village. We gave them a rather heavy coating of Cherokee history, both ancient and modern. We went into Cherokee cultural practices, and every morning between 9 and 10 we have another hour of instruction with these guides wherein we cover just about anything and everything that comes up in the course of the day with them. We hope, and I think we have succeeded to some extent, in creating a group of knowledgeable young Cherokees who know their culture, know their history, and are able to answer the questions that they receive from visitors to the village. The village, of course, is surrounded by a high palisade fence, which is the manner of the old Cherokee villages, because at the period that we're depicting, they were warriors, and it was necessary to defend their villages from their enemies. They were constantly at war with their neighbors. Some of the early writers, in describing the Cherokee of the period, said that he would rather fight than anything else, and that war was a state to be desired infinitely more so than peace. And another writer, writing about them, stated that the war was their vocation and their avocation. So we tried to reflect this just a little bit in the village design. The basic design of the village was developed by Charles Chief Boyd, a young Cherokee architect who just graduated from the University of Colorado in 1965. Chief Boyd, as we call him, had an idea for a Cherokee memorial, and he was required to do this as part of his graduate work in the University of Colorado. In discussing this with several of us who were interested in the early development of this project, we used his memorial idea along with the idea of the drama, the village, and the museum, and developed this total concept of the Cherokee Cultural Center design-wise. Chief Boyd then moved to Oklahoma and joined the firm of Hudgens Thompson Ball, a Tulsa, Oklahoma City firm, which had the necessary architectural engineering background and backup to support the young architect in his design work. So Chief Boyd is the original designer of the village layout as it stands today. He did much of the work, the research work on his own prior to, of course, becoming associated with the Oklahoma Concern and before becoming associated with our society as a designer. Based on this development, we have taken the rather sketchy blueprints, because how do you blueprint a 17th century village where you have nothing but verbal descriptions to go by? We developed a concept of three-dimensional drawings that showed how a sort of an exploded drawing affair, that we could show the Indian workman on the scene, this is the way it should look. At this, when you start it, this is the way it's being put together, and this is the way that it is in the final form. We didn't want anything in the village just alike. Everything had to be just a little different, because you don't make houses like that just alike. Each family built one as they needed one, rather than put out in subdivisions for sale. Consequently, the village has sort of an independent character in the sense that there are no two structures alike. But it was rather interesting, the reception that we got from the full-blood Cherokees that we employed to do this. All of this work was done, I might say, the actual construction work, by untrained Cherokee labor. We used no skilled trades in the work. It was all handwork, and we're quite proud of the results from such a workforce. They certainly did well. In the process of working out all of the details, it became evident that we needed additional land. We purchased some 24 acres in addition to the basic 20 acres that had belonged to the state as part of a purchase to keep the old Cherokee Female Seminary site an historical spot. I might go back just a moment to the financing of this program. There are many agencies taking part in this. First, the Cherokee tribe allocated $100,000 of their funds to this project, contingent upon other agencies getting involved. We then persuaded the state of Oklahoma, the legislature and the governor, with Governor Bellman's cooperation in his budget, to allocate $150,000 for the project.
It didn't hurt any that Mr. Willis, Cherokee, was chairman of the Appropriations Committee of the House, that it...
This didn't hurt us one bit. At the time, he was actually the vice chairman, I believe, but this still didn't hurt us one bit. Mr. Willis worked very hard at it and is very much behind this program, and incidentally is a member of our board of directors of the society. So between Mr. Willis and Governor Bellman, the legislature did appropriate $150,000 for the project. This added to the $100,000 of Cherokee Nation seed money, as it were, enabled us to go ahead with the project. The total project, incidentally, has expected capital investment of some over $2 million. The village itself will cost us about $150,000. The balance of the money that has been spent to date has been spent on site development, the purchase of land, parking space, utilities, and things of that nature that are going to support the entire project when it's finished. We are also receiving monies from contributions from a number of sources. The Cherokee Foundation has been very active as a channel for private contributions to the cultural center, both from individuals and from corporations within the state of Oklahoma. We have on hand, or committed to us at this date, approximately $350,000 for the completion of the project. In addition to that, the state of Oklahoma, the Highway Department, through the good offices of Governor Bellman and Mr. Willis and Frank Lyons, then the highway director, they paved the road, the access road to the site. a 3-mile loop road that includes, incidentally, the rather well-known Merle house or home, which is built in 1845, which is quite a state interest center now because they're restoring this as it was at that time. It was quite a well-known mansion at the time. So that the state killed 2 birds with 1 stone, really. Gave us access and also gave public good access to the Merle home. We applied early for an Economic Development Administration grant for the project. However, this application lay dormant for many months until it was revived after a personal visit to the site by Mr. R.R. Morrison, who is the regional director of EDA at Austin, Texas, and Mr. Johnson O'Malley, who was an Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and Dr. Robert Sonner, an Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development. These gentlemen visited the area here, and at the time we were able to convince them of the importance of this particular development in improving the economy of this area. Accordingly, a grant of $487,200 has been allocated for this project, provided we can provide the necessary matching funds for this. We have been able at this stage to show that we do have enough matching funds to do this, subject of course to acceptance of some of the funds that we have spent already. And this has created a little bit of a red tape problem for us, but I'm sure that for $487,000 we can unravel a great deal of red tape. So we're looking forward to starting to work on the second phase of this project, the amphitheater for the outdoor drama, this coming late fall. The drama, incidentally, has been written by Dr. Kermit Hunter, who is one of the 2 outstanding writers of the outdoor dramas in this country. Paul Green is his cohort in this field, and between them they have written half of the outstanding outdoor dramas. Dr. Hunter has been working very closely with us in the development of the drama program, will act as co-producer with our society in presenting the drama, and Dr. Hunter, myself, and Chief Boyd, the architect, have been in conference quite a bit lately in trying to set up the design of the theater. It's interesting to date that although we opened on May 29th of this year in our village as a sort of a shakedown cruise, we have not considered ourselves as open until the 24th of June, when we did have a grand opening and dedication. At that time, we were pleased to have Governor Bartlett here. We had Senator Mike Monroney, senior senator from Oklahoma. We had Congressman Paige Belcher of the 1st District, Congressman Ed Edmondson of the 2nd District. The Master of Ceremonies at the dedication was Senator Clem McSpadden, President Pro Tem of the Senate, and we had numerous representatives and senators from this and other districts in attendance. We had 13 of the 15 tribal chiefs here from eastern Oklahoma. We had 5,000 people at the opening ceremonies. So we thought we had a very successful dedication, and we look forward, of course, to continued support. Since that date, and since we've opened, in fact, we have had visitors from each of the 50 states, from Puerto Rico, from Washington, D.C., and over 21 foreign countries. I say over 21 because we have not maintained a record. We have a voluntary sign-up, and we don't know whether there have been additional countries represented or not.
But you have identified 21.
We have identified 21. In one day last week, we had 21 states represented and 3 foreign countries, which we think is remarkable. We have embarked on no advertising program to date. We have gotten extremely good cooperation from the radio, TV, and newspaper industry in the state, and they have kept us in the public eye, as it were. And this has certainly been a godsend to us. We just haven't had the operating capital to date to mount a major advertising program. We have plans for it, and at such time as we do get additional operating capital, we will be in a position to advertise.
Would that be approved by the government?
The operating
advertising?
No, this is not. This has to be done outside of any federal grants or state grants or anything like that. This is money which we hope to secure from contributions from memberships in the society. We're a membership society, and from admissions at the gate.
What is the membership cost?
It ranges from $5 for a regular membership on up. We have no top limit on memberships. We have a number of $1,000 members, for example, and we have at least one member who is quite a sustaining member beyond that. We are embarking on a membership campaign. We have a very nice little folder that we've mailed out to a number of mailing lists that have been made available to us, but of course we do not know the results of that yet. We sent 24,000 of these out, and are in the process of doing that now. From this, we hope to get enough operating capital to maintain our office, which incidentally is maintained at minimum cost, because I happen to be the bookkeeper and accountant, the secretary, the correspondent, the typist, and everything else.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've pulled in one of the guides to make the payrolls for me, but prior to the last 3 or 4 weeks, why, this was also a weekly chore. Another use for our operating capital, of course, will be for an advertising program. We hope to mount a nationwide advertising program fairly soon. We did want to be in operation for a while so that we would be sure that we had a product to show after we attracted people in here, and we think we are at this point now. In addition, there are certain sources available to us through the good offices of people like Ken Rue, the Vice President for Advertising at Phillips Petroleum Company, that we wanted to save until such time as we could get major impact by announcing the drama at the same time, you see. These are sources like Look and Life and others that we knew we wouldn't get a major story in for 2 separate years, so we decided to concentrate on the combination, and we think we can get maximum impact by that. It might be interesting to and discuss some of the things that we did in leading up to this program. First, we decided that we did have to have a feasibility study to determine whether this was practicable in this particular area under the conditions that were then existent. We contracted with a Tulsa concern to make such a study for us. The money for the study came from contributions from the Tahlequah businessmen and the Tahlequah Chamber of Commerce, from the Cherokee Foundation, and from the Cherokee Tribe. All of these went together in this initial cost back in 1963. The study, of course, was very favorable, well received, but it did point out one major lack, and this was the lack of services for visitors, for large numbers of visitors for the area. Tourist rooms, restaurants, quality service stations, and things like this. It was pointed out that utilities. It was pointed out that when the program started in Cherokee, North Carolina, which incidentally was studied rather intensively as a basis for the feasibility study, that there were 55 motel units within a 35-mile radius of Cherokee at the time that program was kicked off there. When I personally visited Cherokee last in 1964, the spring of 1964, there were over 6,000 motel units within that same 35-mile radius, and there were numbers of them still building at the time. So the question is whether the chicken comes before the egg. This, of course, was resolved by our decision to go ahead regardless of these facilities, rather than wait for the facilities to appear and then put up our program. Another interesting thing that supported our feasibility study is the nature of the area here. Tahlequah is the capital of the Cherokee Nation, the old capital. The old Capitol building, built in 1867, still stands. It's a National Historic Landmark site, and it's to be preserved. There are other Cherokee Nation buildings still standing here. The Cherokee National Prison, built in 1874, still in use today. And the oldest building in Oklahoma, still in use, is the Cherokee Supreme Court building that was built in 1844. At the time it was built, the Cherokee Advocate, the first newspaper incidentally in Indian Territory, listed it as the finest building west of Little Rock. And well, it might have been, because it was probably one of the only major structures west of Little Rock at the time. It's a modest building now, but certainly at the time I'm sure they were very, very proud of it. Sequoia's cabin is just 40 miles south of us, the old Fort Gibson just 18 miles west of us, and there are a number of very historic cemeteries here. The John Ross Cemetery is just about 1.25 miles from our site. The Worcester Mission Cemetery, where Elias Boudinot is buried and where Reverend Sam Worcester, who was so important to the early history of the Cherokees, is buried, is just about 2 miles from the cultural center site location. All of these things together constitute what is in our opinion the greatest collection of historic buildings in the Southwest until you move over into the Santa Fe and the Spanish area. And of course, we think that this is a good place for this kind of development. In addition, we are in the Cookson Hills, sometimes called the Cherokee Hills. This has had in days past other connotations because of the outlaws and so on, the outlaw bands that found their homes in these remote hills, valleys. But at the present time, we have, of course, the wonderful lakes, Lake Tenkiller, Lake Fort Gibson, all of which support our particular program here. With 4 or 5 million visitors a year to the lakes, we believe that we can, in addition, furnish the attraction that will draw more and more people to the area, thus improving our economy substantially and providing more employment, as well as carrying out this original purpose of maintaining the history and traditions of the Cherokee tribe and the Cherokee Nation. Just 2 miles from us, further west on US 62, the Cherokee tribe is building a facility, an outstanding restaurant, and a craft sales center wherein Indian-made items from all over the states will be sold. And these are genuine Indian-made items, not Hong Kong or made in Japan variety. So we're quite proud of that development as well, and it will support our program, and we hope that our program will furnish the magnet to draw people in here to buy from the craft center. I might point out, just to go back over it, I think I may have touched on it, but inadequately prior to this, the site of the cultural center itself. We do have 44 acres in the total site. It is fairly flat terrain. It falls off towards the southeast slightly. It's very heavily wooded. In fact, we had to use, it was jungle when we moved in there. We had to use machetes in order to just cut survey lines so we could run surveys of the area. The village occupies about between 5 and 6 acres roughly of the site. The village will be at the southwest corner of the overall site, which is sort of L-shaped. We intend to retain the wooded characteristics of this site insofar as it's possible to do so. Consequently, our parking lots, for example, for 1,000 cars, which is a rather extensive lot, are fingered out through the woods. And there are large sections of trees, pie-shaped sections of trees, that extend between these parking lots. We have sacrificed a number of parking spaces in these lots for individual clumps of trees, so on, in order to maintain this rustic setting. We've also used a special type of chat, colored chat, for example, dark brown chat, to keep from having this white appearance or concrete or asphalt appearance in order to get the natural effect if we can. We'll have a complete utilities system there for a city of several thousand, actually. We have the water system installed. We have a sewage plant set up for a small city. And, of course, we will be a substantial user of electricity for the area. I'd like to discuss for just a moment the architectural design of the museum. This will be a building roughly 50 by 200 feet. It will have a beautiful interior, a modern type interior, with display spaces around the walls, but there will be 3 sunken display spaces also for special displays, so on. The exterior will be native sandstone, native rocks, most of which will come, incidentally, from the ruins of the old Cherokee Female Seminary. We have excavated many of the foundation rocks from the old seminary building and expect to use these in the facing of the building. We expect to display, through the use of artifacts, through the use of models, dioramas, all the professional skills of the professional museum curator, the entire scope of Cherokee history from the earliest beginnings as we can create it from knowledge available right on up to the present time. And it will be, in every sense, a professional type museum. The columns remaining from the old female seminary, which are the trademark of the site, the cultural center site, will be incorporated architecturally into the museum design. According
Do you
to
have the dimensions of those 3 columns?
No, I do not. They are roughly 20 feet in height and approximately 8 feet apart. They stand on a little foundation roughly 3 feet high.
Was that the portico of the seminary?
There were 25 of those columns surrounding 3 sides of the seminary, and they held up the roof of the building, 2-story building. The main part of the building, the walls, was set 10 or 12 feet back from the columns, and there was a veranda type on all 3 sides. On the 4th side, to the north, there were 3 stories, including a basement. See, well, these columns really are unique in the nature of the brick. The brick are pie-shaped, designed for the particular columns. And when you consider that the Cherokees mined their own clay and fired their own brick and built their own structure back in 1850 and 51, this is a very outstanding accomplishment for anywhere, and particularly under the circumstances. This is why these columns have become the trademark of the cultural center. It shows up in our seals and our various designs and so on, because we believe that in a unique way these columns represent the rise and the fall of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma. And certainly they're part of Oklahoma's heritage, part of Cherokee heritage.
Colonel, in this museum, you will picture the life of George Guest, and who is known as Sequoia, and who invented the Cherokee Alphabet, which was the first Indian alphabet, I believe, in the English language.
The only one.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so. We expect to portray the accomplishments of all of the outstanding Cherokee leaders, and Sequoia certainly was a genius in his own way, because out of whole cloth, an uneducated Cherokee of half-blood decided that the white man had something that the Cherokee ought to have, and he, over a period of many years, developed what we call the Cherokee syllabary, which is 85 characters. And many scholars have said that this is one of the most perfect syllabaries in the world, because it has a character for every sound in the Cherokee language. We make sounds or use the alphabet in conjunction. We have diphthongs and things like that, where we put 2 or 3 letters together to form a sound. They have a character for sound. This made it very, very easy for a Cherokee speaker to learn the alphabet. And this
Colonel, we appreciate very much your cooperation with the Living Legend Library, and this will be on file for public use at the Oklahoma Christian College. Also, I think we can foresee that this will not only have economic impact in this distressed area, but will have a statewide or even an area impact, bringing so many tourists into our state, which we're endeavoring to do. And again, we thank you very kindly for